4 things to do before the War Within pre-patch. Warband transmogs, dynamic flying mounts, and more. Let's see what a Dalaran Gaming has to say about the ways we can prep for the War Within.
Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Over the next few weeks, Dragonflight is set to gain additional updates with the patch 10.2.6, Season 4, as well as 10.2.7, and somewhere in between of it, we should be seeing the alpha for the War Within expansion, at least if we are to follow the most recently updated roadmap. This means that the month of March and even April could potentially be huge for World of Warcraft, because up until so far, we've only got small glimpses at the next expansion through some of the interviews, screenshots, and even the hero towns, which are being unveiled roughly once a month.
I do feel like this expansion has been more under wraps than usual. I don't know what it is. It's coming sooner, but we know less. And Blizzard has kind of taken that, that approach lately, which I prefer. Like the fact that we don't know what this 10.2.6 pirate patch is about still, that's great. I love that stuff. Data mining has kind of taken that away, but I prefer the secrecy. I don't want to know things until it's in the game. So maybe that's what they're doing with the expansion.
Months, but an alpha would give us a much better idea of what the expansion is shaping up to be, with some of the content, zones, features, and even some of the gameplay aspects that are being brought in with this hero subspec system. Up until March, however, players have a couple of different options. Some are looking to take a break, others have been diving into the Season of Discovery, which has a brand new dungeon raid for you to plunder. However, if you're not taking a break or playing Season of Discovery, there are a couple of things you can actually start working on right now in preparation to the War Within pre-patch, which is still kind of far away from now. But if you want to maximize some of the features coming with the pre-patch, such as systems like warbands and dynamic flight, the upcoming leveling revamp that's also going to adjust how evokers will level in the next expansion, will also figure out a few ways to prep a couple of characters ahead of time if you're still not sure of which hero spec you're looking to play as your next main going forward.
Yeah, prepping other characters could be really important if you really want to take full advantage of the warband and everything that's going to come with it, right? Because we have a lot of syncing across characters now. Syncing of achievements, all kinds of stuff, being able to loot things for other characters on your mains. It's really cool. And the warband screen obviously is going to look badass, and you got to make it look good. So you got to have 4 good looking characters to fill it up.
Before we get into today's video, most of you guys watching these kind of update videos are still not subscribed. However, the more of you remind, the more of you do. So let's keep it going. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell if you're watching these videos anyway. Especially if you want to get more regular content regarding the next upcoming World of Warcraft expansion, The War Within. As part of the pre-patch update for The War Within, we'll be getting early access to a handful of features, and one of the more exciting features of that lineup is going to be the brand new Warband system. Warbands allows you to bind a bunch of your characters all together into a singular warband, where they now get to share a variety of resources and items in an account-wide progression.
There is so much potential for this screen. I've talked about it before. This background should be customizable. I feel like if we can put like achievement things, like I said before, kill a boss, put his head on this spear, it'd be awesome to be able to change this up and basically choose what your background is going to be based on certain things you've done in the game. I would love that.
This account-wide everything moniker accounts for things like crafting resources for professions, or even currencies such as gold all across all of your characters, and even certain warbound
Not yet, but I will get it.
Which are going to be items that some of your more geared characters can now acquire.
Yes,
and they get to pass those items off to
basically they're calling it warbound, which means you can take this piece.
Let us lay waste to this realm.
Michael, thank you for the sub on YouTube. I appreciate that. Yeah, basically you can take this and give it to your alts. That's what it is. It's alt gear.
To your alts, with those items being kind of account bound rather than soul bound. And even with this whole lineup of various conveniences that are now going to be shared across your account, everybody can agree, whether you're a high-end raider or just a casual player, that transmogs becoming account-wide is probably one of the best aspects of this warband system, which essentially allows you to obtain items. And whether your character can equip them or not, like if a rogue gets a bunch of plate or mail gear, they can still add all of those items into the transmog collection, even if you can't directly wear them. So if you're looking to prepare for the War Within, it might not be a bad idea to start farming up some of those transmogs that you're interested early. Or rather yet, just stop throwing away transmogs even if your character cannot use it. The next time you're going through a raid for the mounts or transmog and you find some awesome looking items that your character can't wear, like as a Death Knight, if you find some exotic mail gear, some slick leathers, or even some unique cloth items, Don't vendor them, just keep them in your bank instead. The assumption is, once the expansion launches and the pre-patch is upon us, all of those items should be easily added to your character's in-account-wide collection.
Shit, I've been deleting items still and selling them off. I didn't even think about this, but how much can you possibly hoard in this time, man? There's so many things.
True of various mounts that are getting retroactively adjusted for the War Within, as well as achievements in character progression and the way Renown works, and it seems the Transmog will likely follow suit. So it may be a good idea to stock up on some backspaces within your banks, and be sure to store all of the items that you find visually appealing, so that all of your characters may be able to use them later once the pre-patch eventually launches. Another feature of the 11.0 pre-patch update is going to be the dynamic flight system. Currently within Azeroth, dragon riding exists. However, not every
This is one reason why, like, I wanted Invincible before. I've been trying to get him for years, but now I want him even more. Because he's going to be able to be dynamically flown around. This has made me, the whole dynamic flying system to me has been a W all along. Dragon riding's been a great feature for Dragonflight, and I love that it's being put into the rest of Azeroth. But it's also made me want to chase down some of these old flying mounts more than ever. Because they're all essentially going to be turned into dynamic flying mounts. Like, not overnight. I believe there's like a list of 170 or so right now that are going to be transformed as soon as the expansion comes out. But basically, every flying mount that you like right now, if you do like some of them, is going to be able to dynamically fly, which is huge.
Has access
so get out and farm that
riding.
Shit.
In the War Within, dragon riding turns into dynamic flight instead, which is basically the same dragon riding system, just expanded to other mounts, not just rideable dragons. And there's a lot of mounts we know.
Yeah, dynamic flying for ground mounts. It's been talked about. We've seen the. If you don't know, another feature, maybe a lesser known feature, is there's going to be mount abilities coming soon. Some of those have been talked about with the mount that you get with your purchase of the expansion. You know, you get that griffin. It's a special kind of griffin. Mount abilities have been talked about. And it's very interesting when we see, ground mounts could get mount abilities eventually. Maybe a leap of some sort or a sprint of some sort. I would love dynamic ground mounts. I think that'd be very cool.
The list, at least
show
about
ground mounts some
of
love.
them that will have dynamic flight enabled. During
maybe
the early Dragonflight days,
maybe you're on the back of a saber and you could stealth or something. It'd be really cool to see something like that.
Patch 10.1 and onwards, many data miners have been able to find new animations being incorporated to some of the more well-known and established mounts in World of Warcraft, with many archetypes such as griffins, wyverns, and even to some degree horses getting access to brand new animations that they never had before. And a lot of these animations look very, very similar to some of the dragon riding animations all of your various drakes have had access to. It was pretty evident early into Dragonflight that dragon riding was a success with the WoW community, and of course they were going to keep it as a system going forward, even going as far as to make it one of the 2 accessible modes of flight once the pre-patch officially launches. So if you enjoy the TBC flying where you're kind of swimming through the air, you can still do so if that is your preference. Or if you want to enable dynamic flight on select mounts, then your mounts will be able to utilize that dynamic fast riding system. While the pre-patch isn't here just yet, we did get a small list of some of the mounts that are going to get the dynamic flight system, and there's actually quite a big list for us to go over. So if you look to expand your dynamic flight mount collection, you can start working on some griffins or wyverns depending on your faction. Similar models to wyverns that share the same skeleton, like the Dragonflight Skyclaws, will also have a very similar animation, but also similar dragon riding possibilities.
Right.
Most dragon mounts from older expansions and newer, such as the mounts from the Time Rifts, the Valashar mount of the Legion faction, as well as some of the older
basically anything with a proto-drake skeleton, a generic drake skeleton, a slither drake skeleton, which I think is a lot of those Mists of Pandaria mounts, a lot of the God, what are they called, the serpent mounts, like the cloud serpent and stuff. Those will have the dynamic flying, the same as the current ones. And then there's that other drake, the Windward drake, I think it's called, or something. Though anything with those skeletons, it's just going to be a reskin onto the new dynamic skeleton, and it'll be able to dragon ride. So if you consider that, I mean, just looking at your own mounts, you can already preemptively tell what is going to be dragon rideable, and then you add on things like the horses and everything else, like Invincible. The possibilities are endless. There are a ton of dragon rideable mounts.
Dragon mount models will also gain the ability to dragon ride like all the other dragons. But also, the reptile and dinosaur cousins like the pterodax will also gain the ability
Yep,
to
we already saw this get added in, actually, in the game, because if you do Mythic Raid, right, you get that owl, the fiery owl. It's already got the skeleton, so already you can tell that anything with the bird-esque look is going to be able to dynamically fly
as well. So the system will also
flying carpet into dragon riding. That'd be
dragon
crazy.
Or dinosaur in origin.
That one we have not seen yet. The flying saucers, the flying carpets. Those will be interesting if how they make them look when it's dynamically flown.
Mounts such
None
as
of those
the
have been put in
aerial
yet.
unit R21X will also gain guaranteed dynamic flight system. Ardent Hippogriffs, Ascended Aquilons, Lambent Manta Rays, Silverian Dreamer, and even other mounts that have a very similar structure to all of these other mounts should also get the ability to dynamic flight as well.
Druid
is another class that will also gain dynamic flight natively, since druids have access to a druid form. And druids specifically can expand their own collection
so
of some
big
of
for
the
druids. What a great W for druids. It's not just druids too. Also, it already happened for them, but the Drakthir finally got a restored version of what dragon or what their dynamic flight, their racial was supposed to be. Remember, that shit got nerfed into the ground pre-dragon flight, but it's been rebuffed, I guess you could say. And now they can officially, legitimately dragon ride around using their own wings, which totally makes sense. It's how it should have always been.
Of some of the dynamic flight forms they'll be able to gain. With all of the new flight forms introduced with the Emerald Dream update, a variety of flying forms added through the glyph system introduced back during the expansion of Shadowlands, and even a unique owl-specific flying mount with a passenger flight system automatically enabled from the expansion of Legion. The War Within expansion is going to be raising our character's maximum level to 80, with 10 additional levels for us to gain as we go out and explore all of the new subterranean zones of the new expansion experience.
That's true, King.
That also means that there's going to be some changes and remodeling as to how the early leveling experience works. Overall, the experience of leveling up a fresh new character outside of that 70 to 80 experience should feel relatively just as fast as it is today. To make sure this happens, there first must be some changes, one of which means the Dragonflight will now become one of the expansions that will be added into the pool of leveling expansions via Chromitime leveling, along with expansions such as Legion, Battle for Azeroth, Draenor, Wrath, TBC.
I believe too that the Dragonflight, he might say this, but it's going to be the default unless you choose something else through the Chromitime stuff.
Is just going to be another experience for newer players or newer alts to head through. That means level 10 players will be able to dive into Dragonflight directly and then level through the entire Dragonflight story before they get to head into the War Within chapter.
Yeah.
There's also
who the heck would choose Shadowlands? I'll be honest, man. Who would do this to themselves? Why? I'll be honest. People talk shit about Warlords. But Draenor, that opening quest line and all that shit, the questing was great in WoD. I loved it. It was one of my favorites. So I would gladly do some WoD leveling. But obviously, I mean, Lich King, come on. Yeah, that would be my choice. I'd go to Northrend for sure.
This also means there'll be additional changes to yet another additional
right now it's BFA instead of Shadowlands, as it should be. Yeah, because Shadowlands is a side story. At this point, I feel like the way they're going to go forward with Shadowlands is it was almost like a diverted side story. There is relevant lore in there for sure. A lot of big lore reveals happen in Shadowlands that are relevant to the current storyline. But as far as Shadowlands goes, it's still a death realm, and it's going to kind of remain like this breakaway from what really happened was BFA to Dragonflight. That's kind of like the realistic story of how it went down. Drawing a penis in WoD starting area is biz. True. Yeah, that's an experience you don't want to miss out on, Leaky.
The class of the Evoker. Similar to Death Knights or Wrath of the Lich King or Demon Hunters of Legion,
like SOD,
Evokers will now start with a level 10 character. This is because the Evoker was a hero class that set you up for the brand new expansion experience, and therefore started at a higher level so that you could more directly jump into the brand new content, which is exactly how Death Knights and Demon Hunters used to work like. But now that Dragonflight is going to be part of that baseline leveling journey, the Evoker will also get to start out with a baseline level, and they'll be able to gain levels all along the journey up until they reach the new content. So unless you want to level a brand new Evoker all over again from level 10, you might as well go and make your Evoker right now. Even if you don't plan to play one currently,
Make a scaly
just
boy.
make one really quickly, get them out of the starting zone, and then park them in Stormwind or Orgrimmar.
Yeah, I never played one, didn't really care too much about them, but I did make one just to see the storyline for their opening quest line. That was fun to do.
That's all you really have to do.
So if you're interested,
Though,
yeah,
if
you
you
should
do
do
decide
that.
to level an Evoker, I really do recommend for newer players to this class to really go through and play Devastation and Preservation. I know that AUG tends to be the more popular pick for group content with its buff-oriented playstyle, but Dev and Preservation have so many cool gameplay elements behind them that I find a little bit more engaging than Augmentation. Even if those two specs are not nearly as popular, they still can perform well even in some of the high-end levels.
Sure.
But even if you don't want to play one, at the very bare bones, just create one and then leave them part in the capital city up until the pre-patch event drops. For pre-patch events, we usually have some kind of an invasion from another force or some sort of a global event that allows players to earn additional gear to quickly catch up before the next expansion, or really quickly level a bunch of characters before the pre-patch eventually transitions into the official expansion launch. And there will likely be a very similar pre-patch event with this expansion, which will make leveling and gearing that Evoker character a breeze compared to today. Though out of all the features arriving with the War Within, I am personally the most excited about some of the hero talents and hero talents arriving with the new expansion, as well as all of the different class changes and revamps that are likely will be arriving with the pre-patch event. While during the pre-patch event we won't get access to the hero talents, which are part of the mainstay expansion experience, however, it doesn't mean that we can't see some of the previews of the hero talents.
Yeah, I mean, we might not get hero talents in the pre-patch, but they are going to be the most fleshed out and dynamic part of basically the trial period going forward. We're not going to get it in pre-patch, but it's going to be basically what alpha and is all about. It's going to be hero talents because that shit needs to be balanced. It needs to be worked out. We've already seen the previews for them, talked about them on this channel before. All those videos are posted up already. But the main thing is that is going to be I feel like it's going to be very important, almost a make or break. It's going to be a huge part of the expansions going forward, and it's going to be the hardest thing for them to get in and balance correctly because it's player power driven. So it's going to affect those things. So it's going to take time for them to get that right.
Been unveiling over the last few weeks, and we'll likely see the rest of them all throughout the alpha and the beta of the War Within,
Most definitely.
which is actually happening quite soon. It's still very difficult for many to imagine what these hero talents will play like, and it's going to be very difficult to judge them up until we actually...
The good thing is, I will say Blizzard is listening to feedback way more than they ever did in the past. I mean, you guys remember when Azerite armor was tested in alpha and beta, and people gave them feedback saying this is kind of a shit system, you got to fix this, and Blizzard basically brushed it off and said, you guys don't know shit. Don't tell me how to make a game. And what happened? Azerite armor came out and basically it destroyed BFA, essentially. We lost out on a lot of content because Blizzard had to scramble to fix Azerite armor. That was one of the main reasons that BFA kind of, fell flat a little bit, right? Island expeditions, the war fronts, all that shit got canned, basically, because of how bad Azerite armor was and how they just had to put all hands on deck to fix that. Had they listened to feedback, would have been good from day one, or at least better. So they are listening to feedback now. So these hero talents are promising.
See some of that gameplay and the impact that the hero talents will have in our classes when it comes to open world content, solo content, group content like raids, dungeons, and even PvP. Up until then, though, a lot of it comes down to the class fantasy, which is what a lot of players in the community are the most excited for. Whether you're looking to pick up a Dark Ranger to really embrace the Sylvanas like Archer, or if you're trying to really embrace the Keeper of the Grove, of the Frostfire Mage, or even the Mountain Thane Warrior. There's a lot of cool concepts and ideas behind these hero talents. And the ideas are enticing enough for many players to want to try to prepare for those classes in one way or another. The easiest way you could start doing it right now is by slowly but efficiently leveling a handful of alts. And I don't mean grind out levels all in a single sitting, since we're not going to be seeing pre-patch for quite a while, but you can still start preparing your characters ahead of time. If you look over the Dark Ranger talents and you love the idea behind the Dark Ranger fantasy, you can at least make a hunter. Outfit that hunter with full set of heirloom gear, and then leave him part in Stormwind or Orgrimmar to collect a metric ton of rested experience. And it may not be a bad idea to log on those characters periodically during certain in-game weekly events that will allow you to gain incredible amounts of experience rather quickly. Whether we're talking about the additional bonus experience that comes from the Darkmoon Fair, or even some of the time
That's
watching
true. I
events,
forgot about that
which
stuff.
provide you access to dungeons which even lower level characters can participate.
Yeah, I mean, you could totally just, play a holiday and alt level up real quick. That's for sure. Like essences were kind of fun, but shitty to farm. Yeah, Azurite armor, the main issue with it that I had was when you got a new piece of gear, you had to redo the entirety of that freaking shit, right? You had to redo all those circles again. So first of all, you'd get new loot, and it basically was like a wet blanket because you couldn't equip it yet. It wasn't useful yet. And then you had to go refarm all the shit that you had done already for the prior piece of gear just because it's a higher item level. That was sucked. They eventually fixed that, but man, that was horrible in the beginning. Good night, Addison.
In dungeons which are one incredibly fast and easy to do, but also
yeah, you have to
dungeons
gamble
that
your
offer
piece. Yeah, exactly.
incredible amounts of experience gains with every single run, could present you with a handful of opportunities where you need to spend very little amount of time on a character but gain the most amount of levels slowly but surely during your wait towards the pre-patch event. Because by the time pre-patch launches, or rather by the time the expansion launches, it may be a good idea to have at least all of these characters ready, so that once the expansion does launch, you can dive right in and start exploring all of those hero specs from day one. This can be extra helpful, especially if you're not going to be getting the special edition just to get the beta access to the War Within, and are in between of some of the classes that you plan on maining but are not quite sure on exactly which hero spec you want to settle on. Being able to get a taste of some of those hero talents as early as possible can help you hopefully settle on which class you're likely going to be maining once the expansion is finally here.
Yeah, sound advice.
As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it.
Great video.
And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video, or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.
Awesome video. Yeah, basically the theme here is if you're an alti boy, maybe you weren't previously an alti boy, but you might become one in this coming expansion with warbands and everything else. Gear out, play your alts, man. You don't got to gear them out, but level them up. Get some alts together. Get your squad together, basically. Your core 4, your whore 4, whatever you want to call them. Get them ready, because in this expansion, they're going to be very useful. That's for sure.